Hi everyone, my name's Jen. I'm an author and a book reviewer. I get asked a lot of questions on this channel, and I would say one of the most, if not the most common question I get asked is what are my go-to autumn book recommendations? And that's not surprising to me because autumn is my time. I love a creepy book, not necessarily full-on horror, but the unsettling, twisted kind of tale. So even though I have made videos before where I have recommended autumnal books, and if you want to find those you can just search YouTube for Jen Campbell autumn book recommendations, I thought I would film another one this year because so many of you have asked me to, but because if you've been around here a long time you will probably recognize many of the books that I'm going to talk about today. I thought I would whiz through my top 10 and then I'll also talk about books that are on my autumn TBR for this year as well, so that there's something here for everyone. And if you have been around for a long time, do feel free to try and guess, play bingo with yourself. How many books do you think I'm going to mention in the first section, and give yourself a pat on the back if you manage to collect. I was going to say them all. This is not a game of Pokemon, but you get what I'm saying. If you saw my previous video, you know that I haven't been well recently and I still am recovering. This shoulder is still out of action. And I have tried to film this video several times and have had to stop. So I'm really hoping that today I can get through this video. And again, like the last one, it's going to be very casual. I'm going to try and film it in as few takes as possible because I'm struggling to use a computer right now. So thank you for bearing with me as I recover. It seems like it's been forever, but it has only been 3.5 weeks. Hopefully we'll get there soon. All right, so first off, let's go through my top 10 autumn book recommendations. Now, these are just ones that I picked off my shelf today. You ask me any other day, it will probably change a little bit. I have picked some of these books for specific reasons. I am going to film, hopefully, some videos probably in October where I read scary books, like really Halloween type reads. So there's nothing super scary in this pile. There's definitely odd and mysterious and a bit weird. Some of the books relate to school, which I always think about coming up to September. And some of them just, I don't know, really embody these specific months. So here are my top 10 autumn reads as of today. Let's see what we got. So, speaking of school, if I can pick these up, the first two ones that I want to recommend are books that I read a really long time ago. One of them I have since reread, and it did stand up to the test of time, and it is one of my favourite books ever, and that is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I know this is so many people's not all-time favourite read, but one of their all-time favourite reads. There's a reason for that. It is just so good, but unfortunately it's one of those books that heavily relies on twists, and I can't tell you too much about it. In fact, I would encourage you to go into it not knowing much about it at all. I have also revisited this on audiobook and can say that the audiobook is incredible, so I'd recommend that too. I also really enjoy the film, which is quite rare for me when it comes to favourite books. I definitely prefer the book, but I often have lots of nitpicky things to say about the film of a book that I really love, but I think that the film is actually very good. So anyway, this is about 3 friends and we follow them in their school years and then as they grow up as well. They're in a strange kind of society where there seem to be lots of things that they don't really know, and we get to discover things with them. It is heartbreaking, and I'm not going to say more than that because, as I said, I think the less you know, the better. And also this one is relating to school as well, and I also love the film of this as well because the film has Judi Dench and Cate Blanchett in it, and it's just wonderful. But I haven't read it since reading it for the first time about 10 years ago, and I always feel a bit weird recommending books that I read 10 years ago because would I love them as much now? Maybe I should reread it, but I'm always worried that I just will ruin it for myself. But anyway, this is about a woman who I was going to call Judi Dench. It's about Judi Dench, and she's really obsessed with Cate Blanchett. It's an older teacher at a school who gets really obsessed with this younger teacher who has joined. When I say younger, I think she's in her 40s, and she's called Sheba, and she writes about her in her diary the whole time. And it is this really one-sided stalker relationship. It's very threatening. It has dark, not even undertones, overtones, and I just loved it. And I have been trying to find a book with similar premise that I love as much as this one over the years. And I may do a video about that at some point, trying to find new favourite female stalkery books with dark queer romances in them. So yes, I think I might do that at some point. But anyway, this is the OG for me, okay? I just absolutely loved it. A creepy book that I also mentioned in a recent video is The Book Collector by Alice Thompson. I recently bought a box of mystery books from Salt Publishing and read them all, and I also in that video talked to you about some of my favourite books that Salt Publishing publish, and this is one of my all-time favourites that they publish. It's called The Book Collector by Alice Thompson. I feel like I just said that twice. This is about a woman called Violet who meets a man and marries him straight away, and then she realises that maybe that was a bit of a mistake. There's lots of fairy tale references. It is heavily inspired by Jane Eyre. It is very dark, very short, and just full of all of this wonderful imagery. I appreciated it a lot. A book that I read this year and is one of my favourite reads of the year is Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica Au. This is a novel about a daughter and a mother who decide to meet up in Tokyo in the autumn months. So you get all the descriptions of Japanese gardens in the autumn and all of the yummy Japanese autumn food. Just made me very hungry. And it's about parental roles flipping as you get older, and this daughter feeling as though she's mothering her mother, and her mother being like a bit of a petulant teenager because she's frustrated by this new dynamic, and it's all of the unsaid things that they don't say. And I thought it was beautifully done, and it's under 100 pages. It's a perfectly formed little book. This one is not a little book, okay? This one is a big book. This is The Crimson Petal and the White by Michel Faber. It's huge. Now, I actually read this in the spring. I read it in April. I also read it in Japan. It was a weird choice for me when Mr. M and I went to Japan in 2015. I'm gonna have to put this down, actually, it's too heavy for me to hold right now. When we went to Japan in 2015 in the spring, I decided I wanted to take a big chunky book with me just to carry around all the time. And I loved the experience of reading it, but I also wished I had read it in the autumn because it would definitely be better suited to the autumn months. Again, is inspired by Jane Eyre. I have a soft spot for books that are inspired by Jane Eyre. I just realised that one other book on this pile is also inspired by Jane Eyre. Anyway, we move. So this is about a sex worker called Sugar in Victorian times, and she really wants to become a novelist, and it's about her relationship with this man called William. Is his name William? I'm pretty sure it's William. It's not on the back. It's been a few years since I've read it. And just the way that Michel writes is so atmospheric. It just completely wraps you up in their lives and you do not want to leave. You feel as though you're really walking through the streets of Victorian London, seeing all the things you want to see and all the things you really don't want to see either. It is about female empowerment, it's about religion, it's about marriage, it's about motherhood, it's about so many fantastic things, and all of these themes, as I said, are just explored in such detail. And this is the kind of book you read as an author and you think, why would I ever write another book again? Because it's just a masterclass in storytelling. Also, speaking of older books, this is Poor Things by Alasdair Gray. When I say older, I mean set in older times. This, again, one of my favourite books of all time, and I've definitely recommended it on this channel before. It's inspired by Frankenstein and Beauty and the Beast and lots of other things as well. It's also currently being made into a film by, oh my goodness, I have forgotten the name of the director. He did The Lobster and The Favourite. You know who I mean, you're probably shouting it at the screen, but I'm not editing it, so I can't go search it and then insert it here. Anyway, you know who I mean, and it has Emma Stone in it, and I really hope it's going to be brilliant because I think that that director is so suited to such a bizarre plot as this. So this is about a professor called Godwin Baxter who claims that he has brought a pregnant woman back to life. She died, she drowned, and he took the brain of her unborn baby and put it inside her head and then reanimated her body. And he's got this student called Archie McCandless who he recruits to kind of, not even to help him in his experiments, but to admire what he's doing. So we follow Archie McCandless and Godwin Baxter and Bella Baxter and try and work out what is true and what is not true. It's about proto-feminism and science, and it's just outrageous. It's one of those layered books where it's pretending to be fact. So we have letters from the characters that kind of sandwich the narrative, and you're just trying to work out who you happen to believe the most. It's a book that you will want to write lots of things about. It's a great book for book club discussion because there's so much that you could talk about. Let me reach behind me again. So the other book that's inspired by Jane Eyre very loosely is Braised Pork by Anne Yu. I have just seen that Anne Yu has a new book coming out in November called Ghost Music, which I am so excited about. This is a book that I read in 2020, and this is a book about Gia, a woman who finds her husband drowned in their bath, but she can't really work out how he's drowned. It seems to be really strange, and he's holding a piece of paper that seems to have a mermaid drawn on it. She finds him one autumn morning, and then throughout the autumn months she tries to solve the mystery of his death. Again, extremely atmospheric, lots of imagery to talk about in here relating to water, fluidity, feeling overwhelmed as though you're drowning, and is brilliant. One of my favourite books of 2020. Then for some reason I often think of classics when it comes to this time of year. Classics, crime, thrillers, and then all the dark spooky stuff as well. So the classic that I wanted to recommend is not Jane Eyre, though that would be brilliant for this time of year, but I thought I'd give that a rest. This is Passing by Nella Larsen, which is set in 1920s Harlem, and it's about two black friends who knew each other in childhood, grew apart, and then meet again in their, I think they're in their 20s. One of these women has married a black man and is very happily living her life. The other black woman passes for white and has married a white man, and he doesn't know about her family, about her history, and she is living this very precarious existence where she's just hoping that her husband never finds out who she really is, because he's an extremely violent, racist man. And as you can probably tell by that premise, something is gonna happen in this book. It is such a tense read. I still haven't watched the film. It was made into a film, I think, last year, starring Tessa Thompson. The audiobook is brilliant and is also narrated by Tessa Thompson, so I recommend that too. This is Death in Her Hands by Ottessa Moshfegh. This is her second most recent book. I haven't read Lapvona yet. This is about a woman who lives in the woods, and then one day she finds a letter or a note on the ground that says, "This is Magda, this is her body, I didn't kill her." But there's no body there, as in no body and nobody in the woods. So our narrator is trying to work out if a crime has been committed and who did it. It's very psychological, very unsettling, very Moshfegh. And then my final recommendation before we get onto my TBR is English Animals by Laura Kaye. Again, one of my favourite books of all time. So many of my favourite books are autumnal books. So this is about a woman called Mirka who has recently moved to the UK, and she takes on a job as a nanny for a couple called Richard and Sophie, I think they are called. Yes, Richard and Sophie, in a country house. But when she gets there, she realises that the advert is incorrect. They don't have a child, and what they actually want is a housekeeper. And Mirka absolutely falls in love with Sophie. There's a lot of imagery to do with taxidermy, a lot of discussion on class, and everything about this book is so precise. So Mirka's English at the beginning, when she starts the job at the manor house, is not as, air quotes, good as it is at the end of the book, and the language that's used in this book reflects that. Even though you're not actually stuck inside her head, I just really like the way that the language evolved to reflect the way that she thought about the world in English around her. I thought that was a really just wonderful device that actually I had never seen anybody else use before. I did record a podcast with Laura Kaye a couple of years ago, which was also really interesting, and we were discussing how this was potentially being made into a film or a TV series, but that doesn't seem to have happened yet. But I'm still holding out hope. I would love to know how many out of those 10 you predicted, I would say. Let me know in a comment down below. I did and ah over whether some books are primarily autumn reads or winter reads, but whatever. Those are the ones that I chose to recommend today. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I am an author, and as I like reading creepy books, I also like writing creepy books, and less creepy but just autumnal reads in general, and I thought that I would mention 3 of my titles that are particularly good for this time of year in case you would like to check them out before I get on to my autumn TBR. So the first one is The Beginning of the World in the Middle of the Night. This is a collection of short stories for grown-ups. Some of these are inspired by the history of fairy tales. Some of them include magical realism, but not all of them. One of these stories is about a coffin hotel on a remote island. One of them is about a world where you can buy animal hearts online. One, the title story, is a conversation that a couple are having in the middle of the night. One is about ghosts in jam jars. One story is set at a nighttime aquarium. I will link in the description box down below some title stories, some sample stories, if you would like to read or listen to some of those before purchasing, see if you like them. Then a creepy collection of short stories is this. This is The Sister Who Ate Her Brothers. This came out around this time last year. It's primarily middle grade, but also is suitable for older audiences as well. This is a collection of fairy tale retellings from around the world. Modern retellings in the sense that I have retold them, and with positive queer representation, positive representation of disfigurement and disability as well, but all of the gore is still in there, and they are also set in olden times. You know, some of these tales are hundreds and hundreds of years old. So there's a discussion in here about the importance of representation within fairy tales and how we talk about them. But then, as I said, there are 14 tales from around the world, and they are beautifully illustrated by Adam D'Souza. And if I can hold it up for you and show you, this is one of the illustrations in here, which is a story from Japan. And again, I will link in the description box down below some sample stories if you would like to check them out. And then this is not a creepy book, but it is a cozy book. This is a picture book, and I would say primarily good for 3 to 7-year-olds, but for anyone of any age who loves books and dragons. This is Franklin's Flying Bookshop, the first in my Franklin and Luna trilogy. This is illustrated by Katie Harnett. It is about a book-loving dragon called Franklin, who loves stories and wants to share them with as many people as he can, but all the local folk are terrified of him. And then one day he meets a young girl called Luna. If I can hold it up, can we see how autumnal that is? She's reading in the woods, and she isn't afraid of dragons because she's read all about them in stories, and together they decide to build a bookshop on Franklin's back and take their love of books all around the world. So those are 3 of my books that I just wanted to quickly plug. I hope that's okay. And now let us move on to the books that are on, not necessarily my actual TBR for autumn. Let me qualify, because I am not being too rigid about this, but basically today I went around my shelves and thought, what would be great books to read in the autumn? I will probably get to some of these in the autumn. Maybe I'll get to other ones in future autumns, but yeah, as I said, not being too strict about it. But let me pause this video for a second so I can grab them and bring them over. Okay, so the first one is both a recommendation and also a book that's on my TBR, and it's a series that I've recommended quite a lot on this channel, and that is The Tea Dragon Society by Kaye O'Neill. It is a graphic novel series about dragons that grow tea leaves from their heads and a group of people who take care of them, and it is the most wholesome, lovely thing that I've ever read in my life. It has great queer representation, great disability rep. The colour palette is beautiful. The first one is just called The Tea Dragon Society. I can't remember what the second one is called. Does it say on the back? Of The Tea Dragon Festival. And then this is the third one that I haven't read yet, but it's called The Tea Dragon Tapestry. Have you ever seen anything more autumnal in all of your life? I am definitely going to get to this one this year. Then again, I have picked some books for specific reasons. So I do have a school one in here. I mentioned a while ago that I would like to film a reading vlog called Giving Authors a Second Chance or Another Chance. Maybe authors whose work I have had a hit and miss relationship with, or an author whose work I've read once and didn't enjoy, but I'm still intrigued by another blurb of theirs. This is one of those titles, so I think it will be included in that vlog whenever I film that. So this is The Lessons by Naomi Alderman. I really enjoyed her book Disobedience, which is wonderful, but I really didn't enjoy The Power at all. I think they're both very different. One is very character based, I would say. Disobedience is, and then The Power is very plot heavy, and that's not what I tend to gravitate towards in books, but I think this one is more character based, and I do see it recommended a lot for fans of The Secret History, dark academia. It's set at Oxford. It says James, always the outsider, enters Oxford, high seat or privilege, wealth and ambition. There he meets Mark Winters, heartbreakingly rich and piteously cruel, and the fellow students he has gathered around him. The nights and many of the days become one long party. So yeah, I will include that in the Giving Authors Another Chance video. Then middle grade, I often gravitate towards at this time of year, and this one is particularly high up on my interest list right now. This is The Chime Seekers. I was going to say The Crime Seekers. No. The Chime Seekers by Ross Montgomery. This is set in a forest inspired by fairy tale and also the changeling myth. It is about a kid called Yanni whose baby sister has been stolen by an evil fairy, and then Yanni has to go into the woods with the help of his cousin Amy and try and rescue his sister. And I think that that just sounds fantastic. So maybe one I'll get to this year. Now, I love books like The Talented Mr. Ripley, Muriel Sparks' The Driver's Seat. So classic, not really, I guess it's crime thriller, but subtler than something that is really, I was going to say really subtle. I'm not sure The Talented Mr. Ripley is really subtle, but it takes a while to get to the murders, you know what I mean? It's more about the characters themselves. It's a psychological study of one particular character, and I love that. And that's the same with The Driver's Seat by Muriel Spark. So I guess classic crime thrillers that aren't just about something terrible happening and a policeman coming along to solve it. So this is A Helping Hand by Celia Dale. This was first published in the 1960s and it's been republished by Daunt Books. This book is about a couple who are middle-aged and they have a lodger who dies, and she ends up leaving them her estate in her will. They go on holiday where they meet a wealthy widow and her niece, and for some reason they invite them to live with them in their new estate. And I think not very nice things happen. It does actually say on the inside that it's for fans of Muriel Spark, also for fans of Shirley Jackson and Roald Dahl. Yes, that was one of my most anticipated reads for this year. Then we do have a ghost story, but a ghost story with a twist. This is Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. I've read both of Nell's previous books, really enjoyed Mrs. Gaskell and Me, which is her most recent one apart from this. This is a book that is set, can't remember what year it's set in, but it's about George Sand and Chopin, and they go to this monastery where there's a teenage ghost that haunts it, and the teenage ghost falls in love with George Sand. So it's a queer ghost love story, and it just sounds so bizarre and right up my street. Then we have this, which is fantasy, and it's about Remedios Varo and Lenora Carrington, two of my favourite painters, and it's imagining the worlds that they have created in their surrealist paintings, but as actual worlds that you could walk into, and I'm just so intrigued by that premise. So this is To Catch a Moon by Reem Kechacha, and it says on the back that it is a world in which the moon's daughter holds the key to mankind's fate, populated by witches, sentient animals, and a lion made of leaves. It just ticks so many boxes for me. Now, reaching, something I love this time of year is creepy short story collections, and I do intend to do a whole vlog where I read loads of creepy short story collections because I have a fair few on my TBR pile, but this is two of them. This is by Aliya Whiteley. I love her work, especially her novel The Beauty, but she is so prolific and she writes across so many different genres. This is From the Neck Up and Other Stories. It says, witness the future of farming in a new ice age, or the artist bringing life to glass, the many-eyed monsters we carry and the secret cities inside our bodies, the alien invasion of language to the chantress and her twists on the fairy tale, fascinating and always unexpected. She is unlike any other writer working today. And then the other one is one I've been meaning to get to for ages. This is The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enriquez, and this is translated from the Spanish by Megan McDowell. I know that she has a new novel out this autumn as well, but I wanted to read this first to see if I enjoy it, and if I do, I may pick up her novel in the future as well. And then, oh, dearie me, I sound about 90. I love reading crime in general, crime and thrillers, but particularly in the autumn months. So 3 that are on my TBR at the moment. We've got Heaven My Home, which is the second in the Darren Matthews Attica Locke series. I read the first one, which is called Bluebird in 2020, and really enjoyed it. Darren Matthews is a Texas Ranger, and we follow his life quite closely. He's recently divorced, and I think I probably need to reread a summary of the first one before going into it. The crime is obviously going to be different in this one, but we did get to know a lot about his home life, and I want to make sure that's fresh in my mind. But I really enjoyed reading the first one and all its commentary on the police force and racism and small town America. It was set in 2016, just after Trump had been elected. The next one I wanted to mention is The Silent House by Nell Pattison, and this says on the back it's perfect for fans of Nikki French, so you know, sign me up. This is about a murder that takes place in the Hunter family household. The Hunter family are all deaf, and Paige Northwood is an interpreter who comes to their household afterwards, and I think that she's a reoccurring character in future books. So I think this is a series which excites me, and the author herself is also deaf, so I am super intrigued to read this one. And then also we have a Persephone book here, which is one of their more recent ones because it's published in the 80s. Normally they reissue classics from, you know, 1920s and onwards. I would say 1920s to 1950s is their main, I was going to say demographic, that's not what I mean, the main time periods that they pull from. But this one is from the 1980s, and it is about a child going missing. They don't have blurbs on the inside, so I can't really tell you more than that, but it's by Beth Gutcheon, and it's been sitting on my shelf for a few years, and I should probably get to it. All right, so those are my top 10 autumnal book recommendations. 3 books of mine that I would recommend if you would like to check out. I will leave links in the description box down below. And then some books that are on my autumn TBR, autumn's TBR plural, because they may get read in future years, but some of them will definitely get read this year. I would love to know if you have read any of these and what you thought of them, what you're planning to read in the coming months. I really hope I will be back with you with vlogs and stuff in the not too distant future. I am getting better, it's just taking a long time, and I wish it was quicker, but trying to be patient with myself, and I'm grateful for you being patient with me as well. Thank you for being here. If you are new to my channel and would like to subscribe, that would be lovely. If you enjoy my content and would like to consider supporting me on Patreon, always very kind. Link to that is in the description box down below. Sending lots of love to you all, and I will see you for a new video hopefully very soon. Bye. I've just realised I have to do a thumbnail now. I don't know how I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to have to ask Mr. M to hover off screen and hold the books, and then I'll pretend that I am holding them myself. But obviously I am not.